First off, Chairman Nigeria Revenue Service, NRS, Dr. Zach Adedeji, has declared that the country currently lacked a framework to tax operators in the informal sector of the economy. The NRS chairman, speaking at a session with the editorial board of this day in Abuja on the implementation of the new tax laws, says the only way to tax informal businesses was to continue to encourage them to formalize their operations. Adedeji further clarified that contrary to speculations, the value-added tax was not imposed on poor Nigerians. Rather, it was a consumption tax with exemptions, he stated. Adedeji says the aim of the Nigeria Tax Administration Act 2025 is to remove the burden of tax on the poor, adding that the new tax regime has ensured that only income or profits are subject to tax, not capital or investments. He pointed while the new tax reforms had restored clarity, capacity and accountability in tax administration, technology and process had also ensured that revenue collection was better tracked. The Senate has deferred consideration of the proposed Electoral Act Amendment Bill till Thursday, which is today. The move is to enable senators another 24 hours to familiarize themselves with the provisions of the amendment bill after copies of the documents were distributed to them on Wednesday. Ahead of general elections in 2027, there is a growing clamor for the amendment of the Electoral Act of 2022 with a specific call for electronic transmission of election results. At plenary, the Senate was unable to consider the report of its Committee on Electoral Matters following the absence of the chairman. The upper legislative chamber subsequently shifted the consideration till Thursday to also allow lawmakers sufficient time to study the document.
We take our time and then we make sure we do the needful and we ensure that justice is done to all and sundry, and the bill will save the interests of Nigerians and ensure free and transparent elections.
In other news, leader of the Kwakwansia movement and former NNPP presidential candidate Rabiu Musa Kwakwanso has warned that Kano State Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf will face consequences over his defection to the All Progressives Congress (APC). Speaking on BBC Hausa, Kwakwanso described Yusuf's exit from the NNPP as shocking and disturbing, warning that abandoning the party that brought him to power would carry lasting consequences and eventual regret. Kwakwanso added that Yusuf's departure had unsettled NNPP members and supporters across Kano State. He dismissed speculations that the defection was part of a political deal, insisting no such agreement existed. In Lagos, a peaceful protest against demolitions and forced evictions across the state turned chaotic on Wednesday after police fired tear gas at demonstrators near the Lagos State House of Assembly in Alausa. The protest, led by displaced residents from Akoko and other affected communities, drew traders, women and civil society groups demanding an end to demolitions and urgent government intervention. Arise correspondent Oluwato Simbalogo put together this report.
It began as a calm and peaceful march from the Ikeja under bridge in the early hours of the day. But it gradually gathered momentum as protesters from Makoko, Shogunro, Ayetoro, Otumara, Oworonshoki, Bariga, Ajegunle and Owode Oniri joined in, calling for an end to demolition, forced eviction and alleged land grabbing across Lagos State. The protesters condemned the actions of the Lagos State government, calling for an immediate halt to demolitions in Makoko and other vulnerable communities, as they alleged that displacement and loss of livelihoods have worsened living conditions and, in some cases, led to the death of affected Lagosians.
They demolish our market without any information. The land grabbers, and they comply with the Attorney General of the Lagos State without any information given to the market general, without any letter. So we just discovered that during the midnight, they come there to come and demolish our market. We are using this opportunity to tell Sanwo-Olu for his assistance. We know that he's already here all the situation of this country, of this state, by demolishing so many markets. I think you are hearing what they are saying from our speaker there now, saying that they destroyed Makoko, all those areas. Is that a progress?
To go to shop, buy food, do this and that. Even the children to go to pay the school fees of the children is wahala. Nobody to help. And we have been coming to governor's office more than 6-7 times now. Please help us to plead for them to help us.
Our demands are for the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, to completely halt all ongoing demolitions in Makoko. We're talking about demolition teams sanctioned by the state government that had fired tear gases at a 4-day-old baby, that have, by their actions, caused the deaths of women, children, men, and able-bodied young people that are supposed to be contributing to the economy of this state. We're also asking that there should be compensation to victims whose houses have been illegally demolished.
Tension rose as the procession reached the Lagos State House of Assembly, where protesters attempted to engage lawmakers and present their grievances. But men of the Lagos State Police Command deployed for the protest won't let them, as they fired tear gas canisters to disperse the crowd, triggering panic and abruptly ending the protest with some of the protesters arrested. The Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Olorundare Jimoh, has, however, defended his men's action, saying the protesters ignored repeated warnings and attempted to surge towards the House of Assembly.
We ensure adequate security for them to get to this point. And they said in large number they want to surge into the House of Assembly, and that cannot be allowed. All protests are done at the entrance of the House of Assembly, not blocking the highway. So the 4 members of the House of Assembly came and equally addressed them on the need to be peaceful and told them that they have heard them, they will take their grievances to the leadership of the House, who will channel it to the appropriate government authority. But subsequently, people were locked up in traffic, some have medical issue to attend to, some have their workplace to go to, some want to travel out. And we have to use the minimum force to dispatch them from the public road, which they are blocking. And that is to let you know that nobody fire any shot from any rifle. No gunshot was fired. What we use is the minimum force that is allowed in protests when people become rioters. Nobody is killed, nobody is injured, but we've been able to successfully dispatch them.
Human rights activist Yemi Adamolekun is among Nigerians condemning the actions of both the police and the Lagos State government, describing the demolitions and the use of tear gas on peaceful protesters as illegal and unjustified.
When people have to run because their eyes are watering, their throats are hurting, people are carrying babies, people have children. Let's not forget the context. The context is that their homes have been destroyed. So people came with everything, with children. So how is firing tear gas minimum force? When tear gas affects your eyes, affects your ability to speak, and then everybody then acts. The point of this thing is Lagos is acting illegal, and they're using police force to try and keep people from not speaking about what is affecting them.
For now, uncertainty surrounds what comes next as affected residents await government's response and clarity on compensation, resettlement, and even future demolition plans, because according to them, they don't know whose house may be next.
Right. All right. Okay, Rufai, Dr. Bati, your take on these stories this morning. Of course, the protests, it's a season of protests, it seems, in Nigeria, not just in Lagos State, but the big conversation is the authorities' response to protests and protesters. Case in point, the report we've just seen. And of course, beyond that, we look at the Kwankwansia movement. Dr. Rabiu Kwankwanso is still speaking about the betrayal he's felt by the move of the governor of Kano State. Beyond that, the Electoral Act review of 2022 conversations amidst other stories. Your take on them this morning.
Okay. I'm never going to be tired of quoting Philip Drucker about culture eating strategy for breakfast. If you take protest scenes from the Ali Mosgo riots, well over 40 years ago, the way the government handled it then will not be different from the way they handled this. So the thing is, it's a cultural problem, and I'm sure in fact it's gone worse. Yes, the police chief was bragging about the fact that he didn't shoot any bullets and everything, and we thank God. And doctor, that was why I was saying that I commend Wike, that things could have gone south. Tear gas could have been shot in Abuja. Because I'm saying that because I know the operational procedure of the Nigerian police. They will never get protest management right, except in few cases where beforehand, we have also seen them talk to protesters, even give protesters food, which we commend them from. But when things get like this, they will always resort to shooting tear gas. Is that the only way? There are many other probable ways we can look at it. Could they have shields to push back protesters? Wear police horses to charge into the crowds, to manage crowd? Water cannons? But tear gas is always the quick way to go. And that's the sad reality of our society. Because the earlier we do it, the better it is for it. So, you see, it goes back to the EndSARS protest when people were shouting police reforms and everything. And the police didn't get the memo that the protesters were protesting for them. But what happened? We saw killings. So it's a cultural thing. Nigeria as a state has adopted aberration in every facet of human life as normality. So a country that has adopted aberration as normality, before you know it, it becomes like a country that has lost virtue and has upheld privileges. So privileges will always rule over virtue. And that's why the police chief is saying there that it is a privilege that in this case, we didn't even shoot live rounds. It was only tear gas we shot. He forgets that as little as tear gas is, in his own estimation, tear gas is carcinogenic in nature. He doesn't even, in talking about managing a crowd and talking about the tear gas, he forgets that the after effect of the tear gas canister has been shot on the health of the people, that it might be carcinogenic many years down the line. He forgets all of that. So he says, let us even thank him because they didn't fire live rounds this time. Because if it was higher than this, they will fire live rounds and nothing will happen. And why I was saying that, Dr. Abati, is the fact that when you look at it, no panel of inquiry will be set into evaluation of this protest that could they have done something better to manage it? Because, you see, everybody moves on so quickly in this country. Secondly, as regards Mr. Zacchaeus, the NRS boss, yes, he said a lot of things. We are not here to tax the poor. We are not here to go after bank balances. We are not here to go after, people's livelihood. We just want the poor to be better and all of that. We can't even tax the informal sector because you have to register them. He said a lot of things. But I disagree with him on some things. Does the NRS boss knows that the informal sector is one of the most taxed sectors already in this country through informal taxes? Does the NRS know that the taxes that are being collected by public bus drivers from terminal to terminal, most of those money are not even remitted back to the government? One of the head of the bus unions did come out to boldly brag that he spent over 700 million for President Tinubu's campaign. The question we would have asked if we were serious as a nation was, how did that bus terminal chief acquire such wealth that he can spend over 700 million? I know the quick arguments people will say in Nigeria is that it's his money, he can spend it the way he wants. But somebody that can have that excess income to spend that amount, one would have wanted to know one step further, what are even the ways at which he makes this money? Then what about the illegal taxes being collected in the marketplaces from people? What about the illegal taxes collected in various illegal sectors? So the question we'll ask the NRS boss is, how do we understand how to even effectively talk to the informal sector that the hitherto taxes they are collecting, that these informal elements collect through force, can they give some of it to the government? The second argument I would like to put forward to the NRS bosses, he talked about trust, which is good. But how do we trust the system in a country where some lawmakers in a state, they buy properties for them in the state and in Abuja with taxpayers' money? And you want people to trust the system. The other point, I agree with him, tax is mandatory. People must pay their tax, they must do everything, it's their responsibility. All good words. He doesn't have intention to tax the poor. All good words. But I've just raised some very interesting points. As regards the electoral law, I'm happy the Senate is going to put it up for, conversation and debate, real-time transmission of results. But I want to bring something to INEC notice this morning. That hope INEC knows that they are already collecting people's PVC for 70,000 naira. And they are collecting the serial number and they are paying them 70,000 naira through some different channels to be able to get their PVC. Because I know there's also a law in the bill today about, electoral offenders and things like that, and stiffer punishment. I just want INEC to know and investigate and let us be able to bring back integrity to the system. I yield the floor.
All right, Dr. Bati.
Okay, first, let me start with Dr. Rabiu Musa Kwankwanso. Saying that he's very certain that following what he considers the worst betrayal that he has ever seen of Governor Abba Yusuf moving to the APC, that Governor Yusuf should be ready to face the consequences. In what form? That in 2027, he is bound to lose the election, something that the APC has dismissed as mere rhetoric, and telling Dr. Kwankwanso that whether he likes it or not, Governor Abba Yusuf, his former godson, would be re-elected in 2027. Now, what is the main ground for saying that Abba Yusuf will lose? It's simply that when his hand was raised, showing him joining the APC, it was Dr. Ganduje that raised his hand, and that in Kano, Gandujia, what he calls Gandujia, will not work, because there is, a word of difference between Kwankwansia and Gandujia. However, I think that, yes, in the middle of all of this, we should be talking about the interest of the people of Kano State, because it is the people that will make a choice, not on the basis of what Dr. Ganduje wants or on the basis of what Dr. Kwankwanso wants. We should be talking about the people being empowered to make a free choice, so that certain individuals do not appropriate to themselves, the messianic, power or influence to determine the future of any electoral process, whether at the center or in any of the, subunits, subnational divisions of the country. And that takes me to the National Assembly, the Senate. The Senate today at a committee of the whole, and also at the committee level, Committee on Electoral Matters, is going to consider the report being laid before the committee of the whole, that's the plenary, by the Committee on Electoral Matters. Some of the highlights, we're told, include the live transmission of results from polling units, electronic transmission, which is something that, in the public hearings about, electoral reform, people have been talking about, saying, look, it should go directly, and that technology should be foolproof, not the kind of technology that will be having technical glitches. They're also going to consider penalties, stiffer penalties for electoral offenders, people who either tamper with the results or who collude and all of that. And I guess part of the provisions from the committee will include the responsibility of INEC. However, what is important is that the urgency of having a new electoral act, an amendment of the Electoral Act 2022, in the light of gaps, omissions, inconsistencies that have been observed in that particular piece of legislation. The urgency of it is now. And it is good that the Senate is now, after the House of Reps, going through the process. And I think, what Nigerians will want is for the matter to be considered expeditiously so that the new Electoral Act will be ready long before the elections will start, so that we don't have a repeat of what happened in 2018 when the Buhari administration, citing language and citing the efflution of time, decided not to change that Electoral Act that particular year. So it's the urgency of it that is important. Let this not be motion without movement and make it look like, after all, our committee has submitted a report. There must be urgency. Now, the other issue is about the protesters in Lagos, Makoko protesters who were tear-gassed at the State House of Assembly, where the right to protest is sacrosanct, as long as it is peaceful. And the responsibility of the police is to even provide protection for protesters so that, look, their voices will be heard and the people will be able to put their matter before the appropriate authorities. But in this issue of Makoko, Owode Onirin, and Iyano Oworo, where the Lagos State government says, it is doing a reinvention of Lagos State. The first thing to note is that, look, the state government has the power to, enforce urban renewal regulations. The point we have made consistently on this table is that should be done with a human face, with concern for the people. In this regard, those who have alleged that there is a class cleansing, Governor Sanwo-Olu himself has stood up to respond, to say, no, this is not class cleansing. That what is being done in Makoko, for example, is in the interest of public safety. People not respecting the setback with power lines. People also encroaching on the, perimeter of the Third Mainland Bridge, and then creating safety problems. And that it is not that the state government is demolishing buildings in the whole of Makoko, but that those who have, encroached upon the territory and who have also violated regulations about distance setback from power lines. And he said that also government is providing palliative measures, and also the Lagos State government has offered compensation for these persons. And that in any case, these are even illegal structures for the most part, shanties. So I think, the other side by the government is out there, articulated by the governor himself. However, we will still continue to make the point that the government has a duty to listen to the people, whether it's in Iyano or it's in Makoko, or it is in Owode Onirin. And the business of reinvention of Lagos, will even very soon, in one report that I read, extend to Obalende, where the Lagos State government now has a deal, a partnership with MTN Nigeria to renovate and reinvent that underbridge, area in Obalende. Now, very soon, that will be the one we'll be complaining about, and there will be protests. And it is also important that the protests are not hijacked by political interests. Governor Sanwo-Olu referred to some NGOs and NGIs funded by certain interests who have invested in the whole of this process. Now, the interview with Dr. Zak Adedeji, front page of this day newspaper today, we have always said here that, look, now that the tax law is being implemented, the authorities must continually inform the people, engage with the people. And I took the point that, Dr. Adedeji made about information and the fact that they are continually engaging with the media, engaging with stakeholders, and then providing information. And the basic points that he made, essentially, are points that are already either in the preface to the NTAA, that Tax Administration Act, or that has been articulated by both Dr. Adedeji himself and Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, to the effect that, look, this is not to impose any burden on the poor. Instead, it is also it is to tax more the rich who seem to benefit more from the system. The poor are not the ones paying VAT. As to the informal economy, well, he made the point that there is no framework, there's no provision in the laws for that informal economy to be taxed directly by the authorities. And that's instructive because the job of the NRS is to collect revenue, and it can only do so within the framework that has been provided. And the NRS itself cannot on its own determine taxation in the marketplace, which is that's in all these local government markets. That's the job of the local government. It can also not go to motor parks. That also falls within the purview of local councils. However, you can say it's a matter of policy, and that policy has to come from elsewhere. The NRS is not a policy-making body. It's an implementation body. And what Dr. Adedeji can address is implementation of the framework that he has been given. And then beyond that, I think it's also important that he reassured people that account balances in the banks will not be taxed, because that has been a source of concern. Up to this moment, people are still saying they've been seeing some deductions in their banks. I think the agency, the regulatory authority, has to engage more with these banks and monitor the banks very closely. And then also these communication companies, telcos, because people have said that it looks like, tariffs for phone calls, mobile phone calls have been increased. That's one area of concern that needs to be looked into. And it says deductions, nobody is going to be taxed over deductions, cost of revenue collection, that is. So I think the clarification is important, but this should not be the last interview that he should grant, either to a newspaper or even to online publishers or even to constituencies, stakeholders, because you have to continue to educate the people. I end by saying that it's instructive that about the same time Dr. Adedeji was speaking to this day newspaper, the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, for the first time that I will see him getting involved in the debate, said that there is no alteration in the tax laws, and that the tax laws that have been published reflect the votes of the National Assembly.
All right. Okay. Well, let me just start off with, a quick point on the tax laws based on the meeting with the editorial board of this day yesterday. And it's in furtherance of what we've pushed for here, which is continuous engagement, continuous enlightenment, continuous debunking of myths and misinformation out there, which Mr. Zach Adedeji did quite well yesterday in that meeting. One of the things I would mention is the fact that he had said that whilst it's important to understand the way that the taxes of the people would be used, it's not, their push is for a conducive and enabling environment for businesses to thrive so that they're able to pay taxes, and that, emphasizing the point that taxing or paying your tax is compulsory. I think also very importantly, with regards to this information being out there, is that it takes away the room for people taking advantage of the new tax law and the ignorance of people to collect money that is not backed by law. And this is the conversation around deductions that have been seen recently by certain people who've come out to complain that their banks have deducted certain amounts of money from them. When people are properly informed, they can then challenge deductions that do not tally with the provisions of the NTAA. And this is why it's important that information sharing is consistent, it's continuous, and done through various avenues. And so on that note, just ensuring, assuring people that your bank account, because not everything in your bank balance should be taxable, is not income, some of which is investment, which isn't tax, some of which is, from other sources, which is not liable to tax. So just again mention that, number one, the source of your information, very important. Check and check again. It's not everyone who is providing information today about the tax laws is credible source. So please ensure your source is credible. And number three, if at all you feel in any way that money is being deducted that ought not to, please feel very free to challenge it and raise questions so that people don't take advantage of the new tax laws and ignorance in some quarters to take advantage of people. All right, now let me come to the protests in Lagos State. And, we saw that report where we had the Commissioner of Police speak up about what had ensued, some of which has been debunked or, challenged. Some protesters on ground said there were people who were injured. In fact, a woman was referred to a hospital here in Ikoyi based on the injuries sustained on the protest ground. So he's saying that they didn't record injuries is not true. People were injured based on the actions of security operatives. We had to find a way to enable people exercise their constitutionally guaranteed right to peaceful protest without the danger of injuries or repercussions like this. When we watch videos like this, it almost reminds us of the dark days of the military regime, where people were, voices were stifled, and there was such an intolerance for protest in this manner. We also forget that in addition to protest, because we've been talking about this season of protest, citizens have various channels through which they can air their grievances or hold their, representatives or political officials to account. One of which I want to assume is the reason why they marched to the Assembly complex, is their representatives. What is the State House of Assembly doing? These people are elected on the people's mandates to represent the interests of the people. And where there is such a large outcry against decisions or policies by government, it's an opportunity for them to raise questions or look into the matter further. And so what some of the protesters, such as Ms. Yemia Demolition, had suggested was perhaps rather than just barring them from going to the Assembly complex, create a spot for them to actually peacefully protest. These are the people representing them who are seated in the State House of Assembly. They are the ones that ought to receive petitions and listen to the voices of the people. The people representing cannot be far removed from the voices of the people that they are representing, and they must be seen to actually be, seated there representing the interests of the people. And that's where, I would come in on that. And then another assertion he made was that they were blocking the roads and they were disrupting traffic. And there's a contrary report to that actually, at the point where tear gas was being, was dispersed, they were just arranging themselves to have some light refreshments, and then the police came in with force and, the tear gas. And so we had to have conversations around this, the operations of the security operatives in such a way that it doesn't look good, where it seems like there's a huge and significant intolerance to people exercising their right to peaceful protest. And then finally on IREV, finally, as the Senate debates that this later on today, it could potentially be a game changer. But we also said game changer when the Electoral Act of 2022 was enacted, and then human factor came into this and disrupted that process. We're hoping that they will be able to circumvent that in such a way to foolproof this new act against human interference and technical glitches.